Life is not a highway strewn with flowers, still it holds a goodly share of bliss. When the sun gives way to April showers, here's the point you should never miss. Though April showers may come your way, they bring the flowers that bloom in May. So if it's raining, have no regrets, because it isn't raining rain, you know, it's raining violets. And where you see clouds upon the hills, you soon will see crowds of daffodils. So keep on looking for a bluebird and listening for his song whenever April showers come along. And where you see clouds upon the hills, you soon will see crowds of daffodils. So keep on looking for a bluebird and listening for his song whenever April showers come
Poets often use many words to say a simple thing. It takes thought and time and rhyme to make a poem sing. With music and words I've been playing. For you I have written a song, to be sure that you know what I'm saying. I'll translate as I go along. Fly me to the moon and let me play among the stars. Let me see what spring is like on Jupiter and Mars. In other words, hold my hand. kiss me. Fill my heart with song and let me sing forevermore. You are all I long for, all I worship and adore. In other words, please be true. In other words, I love you. Somewhere over the rainbow, way up high, there's a land that I heard of once in a lullaby. Somewhere over the rainbow, skies are blue, and the dreams that you dare to dream really do come true. Someday I'll wish upon a star and wake up where the clouds are far behind me, where troubles melt like lemon drops away above the chimney tops. That's where you'll find me. Somewhere over the rainbow, bluebirds fly over the rainbow. Why then, oh, why
Is it a kind of dream floating out on the tide, following the river of death downstream? Or is it a dream? There's a fog along the horizon, a strange glow in the sky, and nobody seems to know where you go. And what does it mean? Oh, is it a dream? Bright eyes, burning like fire. Bright eyes, how can you close and fail? How can the light that burns so brightly suddenly burn so pale? Bright eyes. Is it a kind of shadow reaching into the night, wandering over the hills unseen? Or is it a dream? There's a high wind in the trees, a cold sound in the air, and nobody ever knows when you go, and where do you start? Oh, into the dark. Bright eyes, burning like fire. Bright eyes, how can we close and fail? How can the light that burns so brightly suddenly burn so pale? Bright eyes, bright eyes, burning like fire. Bright eyes, how can you close and fail? How can the light that burns so brightly suddenly burn so pale? Bright eyes. Unforgettable, that's what you are. Unforgettable, though near or far. Like a song of love that clings to me, how the thought of you does things to me. Never before has someone been more unforgettable in every way. And forevermore, that's how you stay. That's why, darling, it's incredible that someone so unforgettable thinks that I am unforgettable too. Unforgettable in every way, and forevermore, that's how you stay. That's why, darling, it's incredible that someone so unforgettable thinks that I am unforgettable too.
I took the supermarket flyers from the windowsill, threw the day old tea from the cup, packed up the photo album Matthew had made, memories of a life that's been loved. Took the get well soon cars and stuffed animals, poured the old ginger beer down the sink. Dad always told me, don't you cry when you're down, but Mum, there's a tear every time that I blink. Oh, I'm in pieces, it's tearing me up, but I know a heart that's broke is a heart that's been loved. So I'll sing hallelujah. You are an angel in the shape of my mom. When I fell down, you'd be there holding me up. Spread your wings as you go. When God takes you back, you say hallelujah, you're home. Fluffed the pillows, made the bed, stacked the chairs up, folded your nightgowns neatly in a case. John said he'd drive, then put his hand on my cheek and wiped a tear from the side of my face. And I hope that I see the world as you did, 'cause I know a life with love is a life that's been lived. So I'll sing hallelujah. You are an angel in the shape of my mom. When I fell down, you'd be there holding me up. Spread your wings as you go. And when God takes you back, say hallelujah. Hallelujah. You are an angel in the shape of my mom. You got to see the person I have become. Spread your wings and I know that when God took you back, he said hallelujah, you're home. Who can say for certain? Maybe you're still here. I feel you all around me. Your memory so clear. Deep in the stillness, I can hear you speak. You're still an inspiration. Can it be?
Welcome, everyone. Before we begin services for Edythe's Day, we just ask if you have a cell phone, if you wouldn't mind just putting the cell phone either on the vibrate mode or the silent mode. And services for Edythe's Day will be officiated by Rabbi Brent Gutman from Temple Beth Zion. Thank you.
Kolo mer karava mar maikra. Kolo basar chatzir v'chol chasto katzir hasadeh. Yavesh chatzir navel tzitz ki ruach Adonai nav shabo. Achen chatzir ha'am yavesh chatzir navel tzitz v'udvar Eloheinu yakum leolam. A voice says, cry out. And I say, what shall I cry? All flesh is grass, and all its beauty is like the flower of the field. The grass withers, the flower fades, when a wind of the eternal blows upon it. Surely the people are grass. The grass withers, the flower fades, but the word of our God shall endure forever. Death has taken our beloved mother and grandmother and great-grandmother, our friend and family member, Edythe, and our friends, they grieve in their darkened world. In their silence, there is lamentation. In their tears, there is loneliness. Lost in their sorrow, may they find the presence of loving friends. Hear them, O God, be with them for Edythe's love that united us in life in which death cannot sever, for Edythe's companionship that we shared along life's path and which continues through the tenderness of memory, for the gifts of her heart and mind that brought us joy and happiness and is now a precious remembrance. For all these and more we give thanks to God. In this time of grief, we listen to the voice of our sacred scriptures that bring us the ever-new message of God's nearness. They tell us of our kinship with the Creator, in light as in darkness, in joy as in sorrow, in life as in death. Ashrei ha'isha asher lo halach ba'atzat risha'im u'v'derech hata'im lo amad. Happy are those who have not followed the counsel of the wicked, or taken the path of sinners, or joined the company of the insolent. Rather, the teaching of God is their delight, and the study of that teaching day and night. They are like a tree planted beside streams of water that yields its fruit in season, whose foliage never fades and whose fruit always flourishes. Adonai mi agor ba'oholecha mi yishkon bahar kodshecha. Adonai, who may abide in your house, who may dwell in your holy mountain? Those who are upright, who do justly, who speak the truth within their hearts, who do not slander others or wrong them or bring shame upon them, who scorn the lawless but honor those who revere God, who give their word and, come what may, do not retract, who do not exploit others, who do not take bribes. Those who live in this way shall never be shaken. Perhaps the most familiar words to be found in this setting are of Psalm 23, words that speak of God's ever-presence with us in times of challenge especially. Inside the pamphlet that many of you received on the way in, you'll find a translation to this psalm, which I'll welcome you to join me if you'd like, once I've completed reciting the Hebrew. Adonai roi lo echsar binot deshe yarbetseni al me menuchot yenachaleni. Nafshi yeshovev yancheni v'magle tzedek lema'an shemo. Gam ki elech begeit salmavet lo irara ki ata imadi. Shivtecha mishantecha hema yenachamuni ta'aroch lefanai shulchan neged sorarai. Deshanta v'shemen roshi kosi revaya. Ach tov v'chesed yirdefuni kol yemei chayai v'shavti v'veit Adonai le'orech yamim. Together. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Kavod Av Ve'em, honoring our father and mother, are among the most sacred mitzvot, commandments of our tradition. And how well we appreciate that you, Cliff, spent much time with your mom in Florida following her move there. It's really our privilege to be able to hear words from you and reflection on your mother's life in this moment. And so we welcome you to share those words now.
Good morning, everyone. First things first, Mom would have wanted me to thank all of you for coming here this morning, to let you know how much it would have meant to her, and to ask you if you had eaten. If she were here, she would welcome you into her home and give you anything that she had, expecting nothing or little in return, other than perhaps a little conversation. She would say to you, "Tell me what is going on in your life, and are you happy?" That was our mother, always thinking more about others than she was about herself. Most everyone called her Edythe. My mom was a rare combination of wonderful qualities: physical beauty, grace, intelligence, and a giant, giant heart, all interspersed with a few demons that, like shadows, followed her throughout life. And the truth about our mother is that she had more than her share of childhood trauma, and some of these gremlins stayed with her throughout life. Mom was academically really bright, but painfully shy. She was happy to sing or dance, but was afraid to leave her home or be alone. She was popular with the boys, yet sorely lacking in self-confidence. She fought the many insecurities of her inner world, always with a smile on her face, a kind word for everyone, always looking at the positive side. Mom saw the glass as always half full, and she said 1,000 times, "It's so easy to be nice." Mom used to preach to us that there was nothing more important than family. She loved her siblings to a fault, sharing a special bond with her two older sisters, Clara and Jenny, even though one of them was known as the difficult child. In fact, after Jenny and her mother had a serious falling out, leaving them estranged for over 2 years, Mom's wish on her 16th birthday was for Jenny to rejoin the family and be invited to her birthday party. Their mother relented, and Mom's birthday wish came true. Mom loved to be in the kitchen. Something was always cooking on the stove or in the oven: brisket, salmon patties, stuffed cabbage, noodle kugel, and her famous cheesy spaghetti. Mom believed that any meal deserved a great dessert, and the refrigerator was always bursting, and I mean bursting, with treats. We looked forward every day to Mom's desserts: grape nut pudding, tapioca, black icebox cake, homemade apple pie with ice cream, Indian pudding. I could go on and on. Did I mention baked Alaska and her incredible German chocolate cake? And Edythe's kitchen had a set menu. That is, every meal, she had a specific meal for every day of the week. Monday was spaghetti and salmon patties. Tuesday was lamb chops. Wednesday, hamburgers or steak, and so on. And when in between meals we would sneak into the kitchen, searching for a sweet delight, she would sternly shout out, "The kitchen is closed." A eulogy for Mom would not be complete without mentioning how much she loved the Chautauqua Institute. During the summer, we packed up the car and drove to their quaint home on the Institute grounds. It was like being on a college campus, but for all ages. Hanging from a post on the front lawn of their home was a sign that said, "Daydreams." Mom loved the morning lectures, the concerts, listening to the symphony orchestra, even during rehearsals, the opera, and nationally renowned singers that performed in the great amphitheater. We would take long drives into the beautiful countryside, stopping for lunch at restaurants like the Granary, which oozed country charm. Chautauqua was a happy place, and Mom loved being there with her family. During most of Mom's adult life, she walked step by step besides Dad, supporting him, celebrating his achievements, reveling in his professional successes. They were quite a pair. Both before and after Mom lost her vision, they traveled the world, China to South Africa, Israel to France, Italy and Brazil. They were Edie and Don, joined at the hip. And when Mom lost her vision completely, they were even more connected in that Mom experienced the world in a large part through Dad's endless descriptions of the world around them. She had a guardian angel watching her every move. Mom would return from the Caribbean and excitedly describe in detail the colors and beauty of the islands and how she hoped we, her children, would one day be able to see them for ourselves, a wish that our parents made come true. In today's world, our cell phones are always within reach. For Mom, she had always had a caretaker within reach. Plus, she had Nellie, her walking stick. We all talked about Nellie like she was a member of the family. Where's Nellie? Is Nellie upstairs? Nellie is missing. And when Mom needed help navigating the house, or she bumped into a wall, it was Dad who reminded us that, and I quote, "We need to let Mom live her life, and that may include an occasional confrontation with a wall." I still get a shiver picturing Mom sitting at the kitchen table, unable to see, a knife in hand, completely peeling an apple, successfully, I might add. And Dad would look at the concern on our faces and say to us, "Let her be, let her live." When I was studying in Israel, and the folks came to Jerusalem for a meeting of the World Union for Progressive Judaism, I watched how the rabbis' wives, like bees to honey, were drawn to Mom. They doted on her. They embraced her. They absolutely loved her. In spite of her insecurities, Mom fought to participate in the world around her to the best of her ability. She carried like a suit of armor a courageous spirit and wore it like one of the many dozens of colorful sweaters that she loved. That spirit captured people's hearts and endeared her to them. And no one was more polite than my mother. "Thank you, I appreciate that. You are so kind, you are a sweetheart." Mom's gratitude was an inspiration and set the bar very, very high for the rest of us. On April 2nd, 2012, almost 11 years ago, our father and our grandchildren's great-grandfather, on one summer afternoon, sat down at his desk and wrote his 3 children a letter. Dad knew that both physically and mentally he was failing. In this handwritten letter, he wrote the following words, and I quote, "Your mother and I, we have been so close all these years. Please take care of her. I can't bear the thought of losing her, and more completely, the thought of her losing me. I love you all so much. You have been so wonderful to Mom all these years. Be good to Mom. She is my angel." If you will indulge me, please close your eyes for just a minute. Imagine Mom or Grammy sitting on the sofa or riding in the car or at the breakfast table or dancing with her angel. Feel her foot tapping, her hands clapping, and hear her, a song singing, and happiness on her face. Sounds of joy fill the room, and when she was finished, she might surprise us with one of her famous Edythisms, like, "Today is my day to howl." I believe Dad would be at peace with how Mom chose to live the rest of her days, embracing life on her own terms, singing, tapping, clapping, and loving. I choose to remember Mom in this way, lighting up a room with a song, bringing joy and laughter to all of those around her. I don't know if Mom is in a better place, but the world is a far better place for her having been in it. And finally, she is together with her guardian angel. Mom, you are so missed. Sleep with the angels, Mom.
We welcome Rich to share his reflections now.
Well, that's a hard one to follow. I always thought that Cliff should have been a poet. Yes, beautiful, well done. I think it was about 8 years ago, the last time that I spoke at a pulpit, and that was at Dad's funeral. Who would have imagined that Mom would have made it to 97 and survived what all of us thought were much more serious medical conditions? When Dad died in 2014, there was a lot of attention, of course, on him. Many spoke of his accomplishments, including his being a World War II soldier and a POW in Germany survivor. People spoke of his bravery, his fortitude, and his will to survive. Mom was mentioned as his remarkable wife and lifelong partner, but little was said about now. It's truly by happenstance when Cliff and Hallie and I were together in Florida before Thanksgiving, we came across a journal that we discovered when rummaging through drawers. There was almost nothing in this journal. We actually almost threw it away. And then Cliff discovered a several 6-page entry, handwritten, which Mom had written in 1992. She was then 67. We were really surprised to discover this at all because none of us could remember that Mom ever wrote very much. And we certainly didn't recall that she ever wrote anything serious about her own feelings. And it was a completely heart-rending, emotional thing to read. Cliff mentioned that Mom didn't like to be alone. In her entry, she alludes to her shyness as a child and as a teenager and as a young woman. Despite being beautiful and pursued by all the young boys, that was not the attention that she wanted. She doesn't really say in this journal what she did want out of life. I mean, she didn't know. But back then as a young child, she didn't want that kind of attention, so she just soldiered on. She did her thing. When Mom was 19, she met Dad. It was 1944. Dad was in Army training camp in New Jersey. He had volunteered like so many other people. A bunkmate of his, purely by coincidence, happened to be from West Hartford, Connecticut, Mom's hometown. His bunkmate knew Mom and wanted to introduce Dad to her when Dad and his bunkmate were scheduled to be in West Hartford on an upcoming weekend leave. He suggested that Dad write to my mother and introduce himself and ask for the opportunity to meet her. So that's what he did. And of course, he writes this letter and he sends it off, and my mother responds, and of course she said, no. She wasn't going to agree to go out on a date with some strange Army private whose last name was not even remotely Jewish sounding. So, as the tale goes, it was only after Dad goes to West Hartford and shows up on her doorstep uninvited that she ultimately agreed to go out with him. And I guess we are all the better for that. They fell in love, and as many of you may know, they got married as soon as the war ended. Well, Mom and Dad had a wonderful marriage of almost 70 years. That's extraordinary. And they loved each other intensely. They were not all years of uninterrupted joy. Mom had serious back issues, and her blindness seriously impacted the quality of her life. In addition, Mom struggled with epilepsy and related neurological issues that had plagued her for many, many years. Among her many fears, as Cliff had alluded to, she feared being alone. She really feared being alone. She shares in her journal how when Hallie was small, even going that far back in time, Mom basically made Hallie her constant companion. She was just afraid of being alone. And she goes on to recite how much she feared Hallie starting kindergarten, when she would find herself without a companion during the day. But Hallie did go to school, and Mom survived that challenge, and she just soldiered on. Mom goes on and relates how after she began to lose her vision, that Dad and she traveled to the Boston Eye Clinic to have specialists diagnose her condition. She relates how devastated she was to learn during that visit that her becoming totally blind was inevitable. She just soldiered on. Mom's worsening blindness obviously impacted on her tremendously and limited the nature of what she could do. Interestingly, and despite her inability to see, and somewhat to the family's surprise, in 1999, when she was 74, she decided to be bat mitzvahed, a ceremony and a Jewish ritual that had been reserved only to boys when she grew up. She told the family that this was something she had wanted to do for many years, but it just wasn't until then that she had the courage to ask about it. So she soldiered through the learning process and the preparation, mostly blind, and she was so excited when she was bat mitzvahed in this very room. Mom loved Cliff, Hallie, and me, and she was a good mother to us. She cherished Dad and unceasingly supported him in his professional and non-professional endeavors. She rarely let her blindness get the better of her. This is a theme that you will hear all three of us comment on. Instead of dwelling on her blindness, she focused on happy things. She almost always had a smile on her face. She volunteered at the Western New York Blind Association because she wanted to help others deal with their blindness. And we were proud of her when she received an award for all that she had done for the Blind Association. As Cliff alludes to, she thoroughly enjoyed talking to others. She loved hearing about their accomplishments and their lives. She was generous of thought and kind of heart. She just soldiered on through life with the cards that had been dealt to her. As many of you know, Mom loved music. It had always been part of her life. She actually had a pretty good voice. And interestingly, she had been invited as a teenager to be the lead singer in a band in West Hartford. But her shyness got the better of her, and she turned that opportunity down. Nonetheless, music remained an important part of her life when it was always on in the house. Not Beethoven or Bach, she wasn't as interested in that, but songs of love and life by the great singers whose names you will all recognize, whether it was Frank Sinatra or Dean Martin, Barbra Streisand, Judy Garland, Al Jolson, Celine Dion, or whoever it was. That music always filled our house. On only a few occasions did she express any self-pity or feel that life had somehow wronged her. Instead, she was the pillar of optimism. She was upbeat and always looked on the bright side of things. So, just like Dad, Mom was a soldier too. And it is her bravery and her fortitude and her strength of character that made her a great soldier.
Don and Edythe had three remarkable children, and so it's our privilege to welcome the third, Hallie, to share her reflections now.
Well, you know what they say, last but hopefully not least. For at least the last decade, almost every single conversation I had with Mom began like this. Hi, Mom. How are you? I'm wonderful, honey. How are you? I'd then ask Mom how she was feeling. Her response, almost always, I feel fine. Never, ever a complaint. We'd talk about the kids, the grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, what everyone was up to, and finally say, goodbye, love you. Goodness, grace, endless love, infectious laughter, bravery, kindness, compassion. That was Mom's essence, even in her darkest of days. And in the first half of Mom's near century of life, there were many of those. But the love, the joy, and the brilliant bright light that was Mom, nothing, not fear, not blindness, and not Alzheimer's, could extinguish that essence. Mom wore her heart on her sleeve. You could see the abiding love Mom had for her family in the twinkle of her eyes and the brilliance of her beautiful smile. In her most joyful moments, or when she thought something was funny, Mom would erupt into a torrent of contagious giggles that she couldn't contain, ultimately ending in happy tears rolling down all of our cheeks. Mom's passion for all things culinary brought smiles to our faces and pounds to our frames. How Mom loved being in the kitchen, baking sweet, decadent desserts that were a delight to the palate, whipping up enough blintzes, chocolate cream pie, chicken soup, or whatever was on the nightly menu for what seemed like everyone in the neighborhood. I'll never forget the night when I was 10, maybe 11, that a soft hand gently began shaking me from my deep slumber. It was quite literally the middle of the night. "What, Mom?" I drowsily asked from my field of dreams. "Honey, come on, let's go downstairs and make some brownies." And you know what? We did. Because Mom wanted me to share in this crazy in-the-moment experience with her, and her brownies were the best. I'm not sure how Mom began to overcome the debilitating anxiety that gripped her like a straitjacket during our childhoods, or what triggered the easing of Mom's fears. But emotional paralysis gave way to currents of courage, and with that, a desire to reach beyond a life of self-imposed limits. I'll never forget the call, unexpected call, that I got from Mom during my junior year in London, weeks before my 21st birthday. Mom's voice full of excitement and anticipation. "Guess what, honey?" she said. "I'm coming for your birthday." "You mean you and Dad are coming over, Mom? That's great." "No, honey, I'm coming by myself." I couldn't believe my ears. She's coming by herself? Yet come Mom did, and it was amazing. In Mom's words, a wonderful week. Rich mentioned our shocking recent find of a 30-year-old journal we had no idea existed, with one and only one entry. Think about finding a book with one chapter and hundreds of bound blank pages beyond. At the end of this single entry, Mom wrote about the fateful day she came to Mass Ioneer for a full day of intensive eye testing, hoping to learn why her vision was failing. She writes, as Rich mentioned, of utter shock upon hearing the unexpected and dire diagnosis, and of Dad trying to cheer her up with dinner at a lovely Boston restaurant he remembered. Mom describes sitting in a corner booth, the lights very low, shaking uncontrollably. Sitting across from Dad, but, in quotes, not being able to see him, to find him, of breaking into sobs, feeling shattered and inconsolable, of thinking, this is the way it's going to be for the rest of my life. Just imagine learning in your mid-60s that your retina is disintegrating, like a field of snow, they said, until there is none left. Imagine learning that you won't be able to see your grandchildren as they grow from youngsters into adults, to see your grandson beaming in his first tux, or your granddaughter in her wedding dress. One of the most painful times for Mom was when she lost the little sight she had left, was giving up the kitchen. Mom fought us all valiantly to keep cooking and shed a bucket full of tears when Dad finally put his foot down, long past when it was safe for Mom to be anywhere near a stove or an oven. Mom's bravery in the face of a curtain slowly but permanently coming down on her visual world was truly remarkable. She summoned vast currents of courage. She learned to live with it. She found her way back to happiness in a world without color, in a world without light. None of us could have imagined Mom's valiance in a lightless world or her resilience in a world without Dad. The love of her life and the light of her life. I know I speak for the three of us and the grandchildren when I say I couldn't be any prouder of how Mom once again summoned her strength after losing Dad. He would have been so proud, I told her on countless occasions. With Mom in Florida and me in Massachusetts, much of our connection over the years was by phone. Shortly after Dad died, I began writing down special nuggets Mom expressed during our hundreds of phone calls. I want to share a few of them now, as it is through her words, not mine, that we can truly capture and feel Mom's essence. Mom, you should write this down. I like going to bed. The bed welcomes me. The bed says, have a good night's sleep and I'll see you in the morning. Mom, I don't see too many people who smile as much as I do. A smile is in my heart. Clearly, a little irony in that one. And more irony in these words, a personal favorite. I love you as far as I can see. Write that down and put it in your pocket so you always have it with you. Mom, I remember how much love I put into my cooking. It gave me such pleasure to make you happy. Mom, I didn't bring children into this world. I brought angels. A few weeks ago, when chatting with Cliff, Mom remarked, everyone lives and everyone dies. Cliff, where would you like to go? Mom, heaven. Maybe one day you'll look up and say, there she is. I hope you'll indulge me for another moment as I want to briefly shift my focus away from Mom. I mentioned earlier that when we lost Dad, we couldn't imagine how Mom would go on. But go on she did, without him by her side, for almost another decade. Mom lost Dad, but she had Cliff. Early on, when Mom sometimes didn't remember that Dad had died and would ask where he was, it was Cliff who held Mom's hand and had to tell her, as if it was yesterday, that Dad was gone. Almost daily, Cliff was there to wipe Mom's tears, to turn on Mom's music, and to lead the caregiving team that helped Mom to thrive and not merely survive without Dad. Cliff, we know how much you loved Mom and how Mom's loss will quite literally change the rhythm of your life. We've seen firsthand in the last days and weeks of Mom's life how you could sweet talk her into taking her pills, help her hold her morning cup of hot chocolate, and calm her when she felt agitated. It is in no small part due to you that we had Mom with us so much longer than we ever could have imagined. She loved you fiercely, Cliff. Thank you. You've taken your last breath, Mom. What, if anything, comes next is unknown. It brings comfort to think maybe you're with Dad, once again, holding hands and singing the drinking song together. I like to imagine Dad joyfully bringing you into his outstretched arms and folding you into one of his huge bear hugs. Wherever you may be, Mom, I hope it's wonderful. And I know if I could ask you how you are, you'd reply in your most tender, sweet, and loving voice, I'm wonderful. Goodbye, Mom. Love you.
I
see trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom for me and you. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see skies of blue and clouds of white, the bright blessed day, the dark sacred night. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. The colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky, are also on the faces of people going by. I see friends shaking hands, saying, how do you do? They're really saying, I love you. I hear babies cry. I watch them grow. They learn much more than I never knew. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Yes, I think to myself, what a wonderful
Years before Louis Armstrong, the prophet Zechariah described his own vision of a wonderful world. He wrote, "Old men and old women shall again dwell in the streets of Jerusalem, and every man with his staff in his hand for the fullness of days. And the streets all the same, we wish for a long life. We are taught to honor our mother and father so that our days on earth may be long." So many texts and so many more that could be applied to the life of our beloved Edythe, the last of her generation. A constant source of warmth and caring, as we've heard in the accounts for children. Her beautiful smile and infectious laughter, her devotion to others. She was gentle, sweet, and kind. This was Edythe. Toward the end, she couldn't see you, and she might not have understood her surroundings, but she wanted the best for you. Edythe's best days were experienced in doing whatever would make the day better for someone else. Edythe always put the needs of others ahead of her own. She was unassuming, unimposing, humble, and polite. And she devoted herself to, above all, her husband, Don. Rich, you shared how they met. And the story continues that it was just 2 weeks following Don's return from the war that they were married. When Don accepted the opportunity to move to Buffalo and join Saperston, McNaughton, and Saperston, Edythe followed. And soon their family grew with the arrival of Cliff and Rich, and then a few years later, you, Hallie. Edythe devoted herself to her husband as he pursued his law practice and served on the board of many charities. In 1981, he ascended to become the chair of the Union of American Hebrew Congregations, and in 1988 to become the president of the World Union of Progressive Judaism, the national and global umbrella organizations for Reform Judaism, of which Temple Beth Zion is a member. And she relished accompanying him as he traveled to fulfill his responsibilities. She did all she could to support him as she was comfortable conversing in any social setting. She would say she tried to be careful not to upset the apple cart, and she was extremely proud of him, but he was also deeply proud to have her by his side. Likewise, he relished being a part of this congregation. She loved ritual. As we heard, she successfully celebrated becoming a bat mitzvah at the age of 74 when her vision had already begun to diminish. A traditional blessing says, "May you reach the age of Moses, our teacher, 120 years, as he did with undiminished senses and acuity of mind." And although Edythe's senses began to fail her, she continued to prioritize others' needs above her own, especially her children. May the moments that you shared be a continual source of strength and blessing in your lives. And may the love that she possessed for you always remain in your hearts. The early rabbis share in their wisdom who is rich, the one who is happy with their lot. Certainly, Edythe encountered plenty of setbacks in her life. She suffered from a whole range of medical challenges. She was a child during the Great Depression. Nevertheless, she continued to smile and to laugh easily, and she brought light to all around her, even then when she could not personally perceive it. Edythe will be missed most by those who knew her best and loved her most. First and foremost, her family, her children, Rich and Leslie, Cliff and Grace, Hallie and Larry, her grandchildren, Danielle and Curtis, Laura and Jeffrey and Teresa, Jennifer and Andy, and Ryan. And may her memories continue to bring inspiration and joy to those 8 great lights of your family, her great-grandchildren. We continue as we rise as a community in support of all those who mourn the loss of our dear Edythe to recite the memorial prayer, El Maleh Rachamim. El Maleh Rachamim, Shochen Bamromim, Hamitzeh Menucha Nechona, Tachat Kanfei Hashchina, Im Kiroshim Utohorim, Kizorarakiem Asirim, Et Nishmat Yikra Shalanu Edythe Shalcha Leolama, Bal Rachamim Yastireha, B'Seder Knafav Leolamim, Vayitzro et Chachayim et Nishmata Adonai Hu Nechalata V'tanuach b'shalom Amishkava V'nomar Amen. Compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to Edythe Day, who has entered eternity. O God of mercy, let her find refuge in your eternal presence, and let her soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. God is her inheritance. May she rest in peace. And let us say, Amen.